let's just jump right into it. I read this blog post on HubSpot, and the title was How to Use Ancient Design Thinking to Transform Your Business and Your Life. You went through some tough times in life.
We all do. We all do.
Talk about this article. Talk about the HubSpot article about finding your Ikigai. Is that how you say it properly?
That's a really good question. I've heard it pronounced Ikigai or
Okay.
Ikigai, but that's my understanding of the pronunciation. It's a Japanese concept that I'll talk a little bit about.
Yes, share that story behind the story of realizing that you were unhappy. You were on the hamster wheel. And we both know you get into it and you don't even realize you're on the hamster wheel. How did you overcome it?
It's a vulnerable story, but the reason I tell it is because I wish that somebody would just had grabbed me by the shoulders and had said to me, like, this is where you're at. Because if I realized that, then I probably would not have been on that hedonic treadmill, that like hamster wheel of just spinning and spinning. Two metaphors come to mind. The first metaphor is a car that's stuck in the mud and you're just gunning it on the gas pedal trying to get out of the mud, and the wheels are spinning and you're smelling the smoke and you're smelling all the stuff, and you're watching the motor just turn and turn and turn and turn and turn, and you're going nowhere.
But the funny
And
thing
you're
is,
like,
the funny thing is, Pete, is us guys who do that on the snow or in the mud or in the sand, we love doing it, right? We're making sound effects, spinning the tires, making it all feel good, seeing that rubber burn and smelling. We're making ourselves feel good.
and what we all realize is the way that you're going to get out of that trench, the way you're going to get out of that mud is you actually have to rock with it. You actually have to
Yes.
rock with it. And that's the way that's going to help you break out of that thing, is not just gunning it full on forward, which is pretty much how I spent most of my life, is gunning it full on forward. There's a reason that the rear view mirror is so small and the windshield's so big, right? Because you don't want to be looking in the rear view. You want to just be heading forward. But at some point you hit the wall, right? And we've all been there. You've had a lot of athletes on this show. I like to think of myself as a mental athlete. I think, to answer the question and to be really real and raw with you in the audience here, is like, I found myself in a situation where I had set a lot of goals for myself
Mhm.
and I achieved all of them. And at some point, I just stopped keeping score. I stopped making new goals because I just was kept going. And I'm like, I got into this habit that a lot of us get into where it's the more habit, right? Okay, I'll be
Mhm.
happier when I get this new car. I'll be happier when I get this new house. I'll be happier when I get this new thing, when I hire this new employee, when I build this new company. And we get to the next pinnacle and then we actually lose ourselves a bit. And I remember like it was yesterday, my brother, who I love, he handed me a book with a post-it note. And the post-it note was really emotional for me to even talk about now, because it was like, hey bro, I love you, I'm really worried about you, you're not really being who you are. At the time we were actually working together for a short period of time, and the book was a book by Dan Harris called 10% Happier. And for
Yes,
those
I
that don't
used.
know, awesome. The problem was Dan was on the hamster wheel of life. Dan was trying to get to that next anchor spot, that Peter Jennings level success.
Mhm.
And he got mixed up a little bit with drugs, got mixed up a little bit with this sort of like hype cycle of life. I luckily didn't have the drugs part, but I'll just tell Dan's story for a second. And then he gets on the
Mhm.
show, and on a national broadcast, he basically had Jim Carrey in that funny movie where Jim's just speaking in tongues like blah, 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 and he basically broke down on live national TV, and he went through a breakdown. And because he's a journalist, an investigative journalist, he went on to research religions, to research all these different things, because he was a skeptic of meditation. And then ultimately, what 10% Happier is about, that his book, it's a raw recount of his story of getting to the close to the pinnacle of his success, not taking care of himself, which we know a lot of us sometimes forget to do, especially as men. And then he broke down and he had a nervous breakdown. And the road back for him was a tough road. And one of the ways he got back was through meditation. So I tell that story because I was on a similar place. I had built a couple of companies. I was, by most people's definition, I was successful. I was financially
Mhm.
successful. I had a great big team. I had really smart people around me, and I hit a wall. And my brother gave me that book, and I read the book. I shrugged it off. And then I remember it like it was yesterday. It was about a week or two after I read the book. And I was like, yeah, I'm not really going to do this woo woo meditation stuff. And I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought I was actually dying. I had like tunnel vision, the sweats. Like I just felt like I was dying. It was terrible. Even just talking about it triggers me a little bit now. So I go to my doctor. I'm like, he hooks me up. We do an EKG, the whole thing. And he's like, heart's fine, dude. And he's like, "You just had an anxiety attack." I'm like, "Anxiety attack? That's not an anxiety attack, man. I felt like I was dying." I was like,
Yeah.
"This is it.
Yeah.
Life's flashing, the whole thing." And he's almost like, I remember him holding out two hands, and he's like, "So you can take this pill, like write this prescription, and it's gonna help all this stuff, but there's gonna be some side effects, and or you can try this meditation thing." And he shrugs it off. So I discover an app called Headspace. I switch over to this app called Calm, and it was like guided meditation. So I'm fighting through it. I'm like, this is bullshit. And the thing with meditation too is for all of us in the lab today, right, like we're performers, right? We want to get to the next level.
Mhm.
We want to hit it hard. So I'm like, I can't get this meditation thing. And you don't, you can't beat meditation. You
Good
can't
for
keep
you.
tally of it. And the only way to have a breakthrough is something has to break. And in that case, something broke for me. And meditation completely helped me with establishing a healthy self-care journey. I meditate every single day. It helps me in more ways than I can even describe to you in the audience. It's a staple in my life. I've meditated on airplanes. I've meditated in hotel bathrooms. I've meditated in the labor room the day my wife was about to have our son. And it's like a Cinderella turned into a pumpkin story or whatever, or turned into a pumpkin. I will not let a day pass without sitting for at least 10 minutes a day and doing that meditation. No matter what's going on, no matter what shit hits the fan in my day, meditation is a staple in my life. And it's an amazing staple. I've learned a lot about myself. And ultimately, on that journey, back to your point about Ikigai, it was on that journey where I said to myself, what is next for me? Like
Mm.
people see me, I'm the smiling guy, I'm the happy guy, I'm the guy that seemingly has all the answers and has my shit together. What they don't see is the anxiety. What they don't see is the depression. What they don't see is the ADHD, the imposter syndrome, the not wanting to get out of bed in the morning. Nobody sees that, right? Because we as men, we hide that. And I say that's bullshit. Now I just put it out there for everybody to hear. Right? So I'm searching and I'm reading these different books. And I read a great book called Blue Zones. And what blue
Mhm.
zones are, if you're not familiar and the audience isn't familiar, you're probably familiar because I feel like everything, but the audience might not know what blue zones are. Is that blue zones are a place in the world where people live the longest and the healthiest and have the happiest lives. And the study goes on and finds all these different places. And one of the places in the world is Okinawa, Japan. And what
Mhm.
Ikigai is, it's where your raison d'etre, your reason to be or reason to believe comes together. Now, the true definition of it is all about being at one with yourself when you understand your life's purpose, when you understand why you're here, and all these things come together, your sense of community. That's how they mean Ikigai. I've taken the entrepreneurial stretch and the liberty of extending what I believe is my Ikigai, which is the center of the Venn diagram. What does the world need? What do you get paid to do? What do you love to do? What helps other people? What lights you up? And what's the center of that? So ultimately, when I went on that journey, I'm a designer. I've solved problems for businesses from people in garages to Fortune 50 companies, but I wasn't designing my own life. So I said, we always talk about UX of projects. We always talk about UX of things. What about the UX of you? So I started basically taking my own practices that I've been doing for 20 years and turned the mirror on myself and gave myself a long, hard look and said, you know what? Like, I have all the power here to make the choices of what I'm going to do next. I'm not going to live with this anxiety stuff. I'm not going to work in a job that I'm unhappy with anymore in a company that I designed myself. It was my job. I designed myself into that problem. It was my time to design myself out of the problem. So I went on this journey through a lot of different twists and turns and ultimately managed to understand what got me here. It's a skill building. So the challenge I have for you in the audience is much like you're talking to people about going and getting checked out from a health perspective. I encourage everybody to check in with themselves and
Yes.
say, where are you at? How are you feeling about that? And what's the next peak that you're going to travel? So that's ultimately where I discovered Ikigai. That's where I discovered this concept of UX of you. And it really changed what I do. It changed my mission. It changed my raison d'etre. And now it's one of the reasons I'm here live in the lab with you is I see that there's a problem in the world. And the problem in the world is that we lose ourselves creatively. We lose our curiosity as we grow up, as this world beats us to our knees in different ways, but it doesn't have to. But I'm here today with you guys in front of the camera because I believe creativity and curiosity is a skill, it's a
Mhm.
practice. And when we practice
Mhm.
it, we can live happier, more fulfilled, more joyous lives. And more importantly, every fucking rock star business leader that I've ever met, it's not about them just having their shit figured out. It's about them having clarity of thought which comes from
Mm.
curiosity. It's about them having different ways of solving problems, which comes from creativity. So if you want to be at that epic level, whether you're an epic athlete or a mental athlete or an entrepreneur, or whether you just don't want to be in a job that sucks anymore, like creativity and curiosity are the solution to that. And I'm living proof that you can do these things. That's the story in a nutshell.
Thank you for sharing that. What an inspiring story. There's a few things for me to unpack here. First of all, the power of 10 minutes. Like when you really pause for a moment, 10 minutes has changed your life. That's it, gentlemen.
Hands
Not
down.
60, not thousands of minutes. 10 minutes every single day for Pete Sena has changed his life.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on that for a second, right? Like just 10 minutes.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to bring us back to right from the beginning of your story, which I can't get off my head. We want to approach somebody. We don't know how to do it. We don't know if we should sit them down. How do we talk to them? Talk about the tactful approach that your brother took when he gave you a book. Simply a book, said he loved you and handed it to you. Talk about tact, Pete Sena.
To be honest with you, my brother is definitely not the king of tact. Love him to pieces. I walked into my office. Sitting on my keyboard was this book. And I'm glad that he did it that way, because had he sat me down, had he tried to do a family intervention, had he tried to go through my wife, had he tried to hand me that book over a dinner or something, I probably would have told him to fuck off.
Yeah. I'm struck by his tact and the 10 minutes. Those two things changed your life.
Amen. No question.